What's up, guys? It is us.
Jay and Stu.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's who we are.
We're back at you live recorded in front of a live California freeway.
You guys have wanted to see the beautiful scenery of California. Now is your chance. Just look behind us. We opened up the sunroof so you can see the glorious California blue sky. Something our state is known for is its blue sky, which doesn't exist in other states, apparently. By the way.
Yeah. This is a special hue of blue sky.
Yep. And you can see the beautiful, bright morning yellow sun. Is the sun really yellow? I kind of feel like I haven't looked enough intensely at the sun to tell its color. It's mostly like, that hurts. It's the color of pain.
Yeah, people say that they experience colors with sensations. Yeah, maybe yellow is your pain, bro.
I don't know. We always kids draw the sun as yellow, and I'm like, how long have you looked at the sun to say like, well, it's yellow?
I don't know. Today, I wanted to talk about the Dresden Files.
Yeah.
The Dresden Files is by an author by the name of Jim Butcher. So Jim Butcher wasn't on our list yesterday, and I think it's because he writes...
Yeah, we kind of wanted to make like a high fantasy list, and then we're like, well, we really need to think outside of that and talk about just all fantasy, because it's a really broad genre. And the Dresden Files, now Jim Butcher's written like more heroic type fantasy,
heroic and military and
high fantasy,
even high fantasy.
And so he's written that kind of stuff as well. So he's not like a one-dimensional writer that just writes this like Dresden Files detective wizard series. But I think it's cool to talk about this stuff because it is a really, really good example of how you can cross a lot of genres, especially in the first couple books, where he's really writing a fantasy book. It's got all this magic and fantasy elements, but it's set in a city environment. I think it's set in Chicago.
Chicago, yep.
And you like the sunshine hue. It's set in Chicago, and then
that's not helping.
And then it's also got a strong noir feel because he's a detective.
Yeah.
And so it's like you cross like a detective genre and a fantasy genre, and you come up with Dresden Files. I think it's appealing for a lot of people. For those reasons. I
think that's what really picks people up, especially the adult market, like the 30 to 50 men range is that noir feel, that detective feel, because that's not really a young adult genre, but the fantasy is. So you're casting a pretty wide net using multiple categories. And now Derek Murphy talks about choosing your categories a lot, and I think this is really effective because you're cross-pollinating in two fairly popular genres, but in doing so, you're putting yourself, at least on Amazon, in a very specific genre set of categories that isn't as populated as say detective noir or urban fantasy. Because let me tell you, if you're writing an urban fantasy, there is a lot of competition in there.
Yeah, it turns out there's a lot going on in that genre set. So
it's important to be able to differentiate, and that's something that I'm working on with my book Immortal Fear, is making sure that I can get into appropriate subgenres that are going to make my book stand out. And this is something that Dresden did really well, and I think probably by accident, because he's published by Ace Rock, or at least the first couple Dresden Files were, and so they weren't worried about Amazon's SEO at all.
Yeah, they should be.
Well, I'm sure they are now.
Yeah, it's like Simon & Schuster's not worried about SEO. It's like, well, I don't know about how their stock is doing. They're not worried about operating the internet to make money.
Yeah. So let's talk about brass tacks in Dresden. It was my first introduction into urban fantasy, and what I loved about it, what really caught my attention, was that this noir style. He's kind of talking to himself. It's in first person, past tense. I can't stand first person present tense. It makes me cringe.
Yeah, that drives me nuts. I go to the door. I open it. It's like we're getting a play-by-play inside your head. That feels weird.
Yeah. So
I went to the door. I opened it like you're telling somebody a story. You know what I'm saying, guys?
So
there we go.
One of the first things that it tells you is he's listed in the Yellow Pages in Chicago as Harry Dresden, wizard. No party tricks, no love potions, detective for private investigator kind of thing. And so it goes right away to tell you that nobody takes him seriously because nobody thinks that wizards are a real thing. And you as the reader find out pretty quick that he's an actual wizard casting actual magic, and he is for the Chicago PD.
Yeah, he's a
consultant. Thank you. He's a consultant for the Chicago PD, and on these like weird kind of paranormal things. But of course, the police department doesn't take him seriously either. But they know that he's pointed them in the right direction a lot of times. Now, so that's kind of the setup. And the setup is really cool because what inevitably happens is he goes to consult on this case. It turns out that he doesn't want to tell the police what's actually happening because he doesn't want them to all go get themselves killed. So he kind of leads them on the wrong trail as he goes and investigates this rogue wizard. And
some old dude with a katana pops out of the bushes to chop his head off. That actually happens.
Yeah. So
he's basically in trouble in the wizard world. Constantly, and there's a dude that's assigned to just kill him if he steps out of line.
Yeah, so
and he'll just like appear out of nowhere and be like, "It's time to die, Harry."
There's this white wizard council, and basically there's a really strict rule set in the magic world about what wizards can and can't do, and they're really concerned with black magic. Because you're not, one of the first rules is you can't kill people using magic, but you find out that Harry killed his mentor using magic.
Yeah, and then they just kind of throws that out there, and then you have to kind of gotta wait a while to figure out anything having to do with that. So
he leads the police on this wild goose chase, and eventually they find out that they're blowing smoke up their ass, and he tells, basically they arrest him. They're like, we suspect you for this murder now. You're like obstructing justice and this and that. And he has to convince the detective who Karen Murphy, who is a huge character in the series, that he's not involved. He's really trying to protect them, and they need to let him go, otherwise more people are going to die.
And of course, the warnings are never heeded.
Yes. So
whenever a knowledge, okay, so this is like a good piece of storycraft. Whenever a character has knowledge that would help people, it's a really good effect. If you have authority, ignore them. Yeah. And if you read Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling does this constantly. So the children have this set of knowledge about bad things happening. And the adults refuse to believe them or to do anything about it. Yeah. And it's designed to create frustration and dissonance in the reader because it's a type of conflict. It's like, in the very first book, it's like, Snape's trying to get or Voldemort's trying to come in and get the Philosopher's Stone. And they're like, Harry, don't worry about the Philosopher's Stone. It's safe. Yeah. And you don't understand. I put these clues together and I know that this is happening. And they're like, Harry, don't worry about it. And then that's what happens. And so it's like that spurs the characters towards further action because authority's doing that. And it also increases the danger. Yeah. Because if your authority is not believing you, then it's like you're on your own.
Yeah, you got no backup.
You have no backup, and that's that creates like that extra little bit of tension, which I think is good, and it works good in the Dresden Files. with the Bright Wizard Council and with the police.
Yeah.
Because the police are like, we don't believe you, and he's like, you need to believe me. You gotta believe me.
And then
the Bright Wizard Council's like, we're watching you, and so if you move beyond these limits that we've defined, it's a great way to like define limits of characters. Then we're gonna have this bald guy hop out of the bushes with a katana and chop your head off.
Yeah. And it sets up such fantastic conflict for the rest of the series. Now, that's a pretty big synopsis of the story up until about the third act, and of the first book, which is called Stormfront. And I will say that I loved the first book when I read it. I read it, and I think I read it in a night. I loved it so much. I went out, bought the second one. I read all. I think there were 7 out when I started reading. Now we're waiting on 15, I believe.
Wow.
And they get better every single time. I still love the story. I'm so attached to the characters that when the series is finally over, I'll probably cry just because I love these characters so much.
Yeah, well, you know what's got to happen in the last few books? You have to start killing people.
Well, and so
you gotta kill him.
Kill him, right? So Jim Butcher has already said that it's gonna be 20 episodes. So the Dresden Files have been very episodic, which means that each book has its own self-contained plot, which address this overarching build towards apocalypse, basically.
Yeah.
Then there's going to be 3 books after the 20 episodes that are going to be a trilogy of the apocalypse.
Yeah.
So where I'm sure characters will die and hearts will break and tears will be shed.
All the good stuff.
Yeah. So for me, there's 2 sets of urban fantasy. There's like tough guy urban fantasy, or like noir urban fantasy, you could say, where people are kicking ass and taking names. And then you have on the opposite spectrum this riding the cusp of paranormal romance. So paranormal romance is the biggest genre of urban fiction, of urban fantasy, excuse me. And it's because romance is the best-selling genre, period. So
there's a lot of money in romance.
If you put fantasy and romance, there is a market there for people who want that. So, whereas I discovered urban fantasy as urban fantasy, it's fantasy but in an urban setting. A lot of times now with the huge names in urban fantasy, it's like vampire werewolf romance.
Yeah,
that's kind of what it is.
I was trying to think of a way to put it. Like, what the thing about paranormal romance, like there's these reoccurring themes, and when you nail them, you'll see why people are so interested in it. Is that like when you have a monster and a person, it's an automatic level of like forbidden love.
Yeah.
There's an automatic association of danger, and those 2 things by themselves are like really, really powerful things for romance.
Yeah.
So the element of danger or risk, and the element of it being forbidden somehow.
Yeah.
And there's also an ability to use prose in slightly unconventional ways when it comes to describing like sexual encounters. And if you ever read the Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice, she describes sucking blood in the way that you would have sex.
Yeah.
And so people have extracted that. That ends up being like another element that's used. So you can see why people end up getting attracted to it, is that you have this typical story where you have like a forbidden love, there's automatic danger associated with it, and different descriptions of sex.
Yes. So and that's not to say that in urban fantasy you can't have romantic elements. In fact, in pretty much every Dresden book, there is elements of romance, and in some of them there's outright sex. And I think he does a pretty good job with it.
Yeah, I think romance is a good, is a good story element for a lot of stories.
Yeah.
And it's a really good B story.
Yeah.
So most of the time, you're going to have your B story be romantic on some level. Now, I've written, let me think about, I have a C story that's a romance in Prophet of the God Seed, but it doesn't get fulfilled because it's a series.
Yeah.
And I've only come out the first book. I have a romance as a B story in Muramasa. This new book I'm coming out with does not have a romance subplot. Because the quest has to do with romance, like a previously established relationship.
Yeah.
But people get really, really interested in that because it's another thing of tension. It's like, does he like me? Does he not like me?
Yeah.
Are they going to get together? I really want them to get together. It's like, oh, I hope she doesn't like that guy.
Yeah.
That guy's not a nice guy. She's going out with him.
Yeah, and that, I mean, it also really cues into young adult readers.
Yeah.
Just because that's
a prime interest.
That's a prime interest for them.
And you know what? It's a prime interest for your male young adult readers too. It's not just your female ones.
Yeah.
Males like to read romance, but they don't admit it. That's a fun thing about marketing, right? It's like, you realize that your male audience does want these elements, but they don't ever admit that they want them.
Yeah.
And they're not going to seek out those stories overtly.
Yeah.
But if you have it as a B story, it's really effective.
And I think they don't want it in the same way as your female audience does. So, and that just has to do with male and female sexuality. Men and women are they experience sex in very different ways. So your romance is going to entice the sexes in different ways. And I think I know lots of women who like the Dresden Files. They like the romance elements. They like the funny tough guy who is Dresden.
Yeah, and this is something worth talking about. Is I don't think there's this idea that you're going to appeal to like one sex or the other. That's not like hard and fast. There's plenty of things that appeal to both sexes well. And I think most really successful fiction has elements that are going to appeal to both sexes. I don't think you can say that like Hunger Games is purely marketed towards females because there's a female protagonist. I think boys and men can enjoy female protagonists just as much as women can, and women can enjoy male protagonists. It's just about the character being interesting, likable, and having struggle, growth, and caring about their goals and all that kind of stuff. I don't think you have to have like there's people who say it's like if you have a female protagonist, you're automatically marketing to females. Like I don't really think that's the case. I don't
think so either. I mean, you look at Mistborn. Mistborn had a female protagonist, and I don't know this for sure, but it was definitely a male heavy readership.
I think that just has to do with the genre.
Yeah.
And you know what, though? Brandon Sanderson might have captured more female readers by having a female protagonist. I don't know if that was an active choice. My next book, Water of Awakening, that has a female protagonist, and I'm not writing it to like try to specifically appeal to female readers. That's just the story I had in mind. It had the main character was female, and the story actually would work with a male character because a male character is already expected to do the things that this female character does in the society she lives in, which is to take risks and go on adventures and be heroic.
Well, with Cloaked in Darkness, which is free this week on Amazon, check it out. There's two female protagonists, and the conflict revolves around rescuing these children, which I just felt like was a
female motivation.
A female motivation, which not to say that men aren't interested in saving children, but this particular story just felt
females fit nicely into that. That puzzle piece.
And the two women are badasses, and they kick a lot of ass. And if you're into that kind of thing, I think you'd really enjoy it. Check it out on Amazon. Cloaked in Darkness, Matthew J. Wellman.
Plug. We're kind of getting off track here talking about this, but the point is that Harry Dresden, I think, appeals to a lot of people. And I think if you're going to look at like some of the bigger character archetypes, I think he actually fits into the everyman category not neatly, because you're like, how could a wizard be an everyman? But he's a wizard that doesn't, at least at the beginning of the series, is not particularly like famous or well known. People don't really believe him or think that like he's as strong or as powerful as he actually is. He has a mundane job as like a, I know private investigator doesn't seem that mundane, but it's like, it's not, his job is not being Iron Man, right? Yeah. He's not like a crazy paragon or anything like that. So he fits nicely into the everyman category.
Well, and not only that, all of the like lawful good forces are aligned against him.
Yes, which means that he has to be a neutral character.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what really
that makes you a little more. And he doesn't. And the thing is, everyman is usually used as like a negative. It's like a character without any strong traits, like Harry Potter's an everyman. He doesn't. It's just that he doesn't have strong traits that are going to turn you off from him.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of traits that you can identify with and find likable. It's not that he's a flawless character. He has his own flaws.
Yeah, he's not a Gary Sue.
Yeah, he's not a Gary Stu. It's just a matter of having that easy identification and kind of seeing a more down to earth, everyday kind of person as the main character. So a lot of people identify with that. Other thing I was going to say about about the Dresden Files, I mentioned this before. The first few books are totally episodic, so you can read them and put them down. And so I didn't read the entire series. I only read the first couple of books, and they're okay. You were going to say that like you think they're the worst books.
Yeah, the first two books are easily the worst, and it's because the first book was the first book he ever published.
Yeah.
The second book, he's just kind of getting his style under his feet, and by the third book, you establish main characters and main goals. You establish this vampire cult that runs the world, and you encounter more supernatural creatures that you basically take. In the second book, Harry's kind of set up to the point where you're like, okay, he's kind of a big fish now in Chicago, and then in the third book, you realize that he is so utterly insignificant that you don't think that he could ever be powerful enough to actually contend with these forces that are set up against him. And there's all this tension with this love interest, and it's just so good. And there's a huge resolution that finally happens in, I think, book 12 called Changes. Might be 12, might be 13. That it's just so impactful, and you think, wow, he finally had this big win at this huge cost of people that he loves. And then you realize in the next book that it just created more problems.
Yeah.
It's so effective.
It's a good way, because that's actually a good technique, because you create a resolution at the end of the book, which lets the reader. And you always, if you leave a thread dangling, they're gonna want more. I kind of learned this with Muramasa, because I left a couple threads dangling on purpose, and that we don't get, we don't quite know what happens to the blacksmith, and we don't quite know what happens to Yoshio and Amaya after they basically walk off into the moonlight, and you're like, well, I want to know what happens to them next. And I never really thought about the sequel. I'm like, that's just the way a story should end, because it ends with going on with your life.
Yeah.
And life doesn't end neatly. It's not like they lived happily ever. I don't want to ever say I have said before they've lived happily ever after, and that's in a thing I wrote. There was an explicit fairy tale.
Yeah, explicitly a fairy tale.
Explicitly a fairy tale. So, but that's good, because that means in the next one you can just take that, turn it 90 degrees, and you have an instant hype up of tension at the beginning of the book, making people want to turn the page and get to the end. Yeah. And that's pretty. I think that's a pretty good technique. So
yeah, for sure.
So I think we're getting to the end here.
Yeah. There's lots to say. I would suggest to you, if you're interested at all in the Dresden Files, maybe you picked up Stormfront and it wasn't for you. There's definitely things in Stormfront that turn people off, like the fairies named, the fairy named Toot Toot who eats pizza. Some people think that's funny, like me. I thought that was funny. Some people are really turned off by that. And if that turned you off, I would say try the third book. the third book is fantastic, and it just gets better from there.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to miss anything.
Yeah, the first two books are really like little detective stories. The first one is, I'm trying to remember what the second one's like werewolves, right?
Yeah, the second one is werewolves.
So it's a really good sequel in terms of like nailing that genre, like just hitting it perfectly. It's like, okay, second one, we've established things. It's time to do another paranormal thing. Let's do werewolves.
Yeah.
So it's called Full Moon.
By the way, my upcoming urban fantasy, Immortal Fear, features werewolves heavily. So.
Lycanthropes.
Yes.
I suspected lycanthropy from the beginning. I was reminded of this epic D&D session we had where I freestyled lycanthropy. I freestyled lycanthropy dream story. That was fun. That was so fun.
That was really fun.
Yeah, and it made everyone roll with the giant D20 in the dream world.
Yeah.
We had this D20. It was like this big. It's like you have to roll with the big one.
Yeah. Oh, that was so much fun.
Anyway, guys, so you can find me at davidvstewart.com and dvspress.com. Email me, Stu at davidvstewart, STEWART.com.
You can find me at matthewjwellman.com. And reminder, Cloaked in Darkness is free this week on Amazon. And
yep. And Prophet of God Seed's free on Amazon right now too. Links are down below in the description. And we'll see you next time. Don't forget to email if you want to get on email mailing lists, get early access to books.
Yes, early access.
Early access is good. Have a good one, guys.
Later.